Right. Well, thanks everybody. Good to see you. Good to have the invite to Shy Hack Night. I'm actually down in Springfield, Illinois, but originally a Chicago suburb native. I won't claim Chicago uh, proper, although my daughter does live up there in Logan Park now. Um, I'm working on getting my screen shared here. Give me just one second. And thanks again for inviting me to come share a little bit. I'm going to talk about a topic near and dear to my heart. It's what I do for a job as the Chief Information Accessibility Officer for the state of Illinois. Um, Basically, focus on working to make information technology work for people with disabilities. Um, I've been doing it for several decades now. I hate to admit it, but just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I actually started out as a rehabilitation engineer. It's an engineer working with technology to help people with disabilities at the University of Illinois. I had the opportunity when I was in grad school to work on um, some projects in wheelchair biomechanics, actually studying how wheelchair athletes pushed the rims of their sports chairs and racing chairs. And through that, got to know some of the wheelchair athletes at U of I. And there was one story that I often like to share that one of the friends I made through that program claims happened to him. I'm not entirely sure it's true, but it's a good story nonetheless. So this is a Olympic caliber wheelchair athlete, and he claims that one day on campus he needed to go to the local campus hardware store for whatever reason, and rolled up to the store, found, set up three steps up to the front to the front door. And well, he probably could have thrown his chair up the steps and climbed up there on his own. He happened to see the proprietor inside the store and kind of waved him down, got him to come to the door, and came to the proprietor came to the front door and he asked, where's your accessible entrance? And the store owner said, well, I don't have one. And my friend asked, what, why, why not? And the store owner said, well, because people in wheelchairs never come in here. And so the punchline there is also a good lesson that still rings true today, and that is, when we aren't careful about accessibility and aren't aware of the barriers we may be creating, we don't even know that we are excluding people. If they can't even get in the front door, how do we even know that we're missing out on that? And again, I'm not entirely sure that that was a true story, but a good one nonetheless. And it is something that I still encounter in my job on a daily basis. Not daily anymore, thank goodness, but every once in a while we do still hear from software vendors or contractors or developers who say, why do I need to do this? It doesn't, I don't think my website or my app or my documents are being used by people with disabilities. But just because you don't know doesn't mean it's not happening. And maybe by paying a little attention, we can actually open up the door to including people with disabilities. So just a little bit of background, we're talking about information accessibility. Not every kind of disability is impacted, is applicable when we're talking about using a computer system or a smartphone or other IT. But we are certainly talking about including people who have visual impairments, whether that's something as minimal as color blindness, where maybe I just need to be able to increase the contrast of the colors on the screen. Um, what we call low vision, where maybe I just need to magnify and make everything a little bit bigger in order to see it, all the way on up to being completely blind, where I need to, I can't see the screen at all. I need to listen to it read out loud, or even use a dynamic refreshable braille device that dynamically displays the words on the screen in braille characters that I can feel. Um, it also, of course, includes addressing the needs of people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And anytime we're using doing video or having recorded video, we want to make sure that we include captions. When it comes to interactive forums or applications, we need to be aware of including people who have disabilities affect the use of their hands, whether it's something as mild as arthritis or carpal tunnel syndrome, or all the way on up to severe cerebral palsy or even amputation, whether maybe I need to use a special mouse or a slightly larger keyboard or a head pointer or control the computer by speaking to it. And last but certainly not least, we also want to make sure that we're including people with cognitive disabilities, whether it's something like a learning disability, like dyslexia, or anything that affects my ability to process information. So when we're talking about IT accessibility, we're talking about including people with all those kinds of disabilities. And you might be surprised to know, again, you may not encounter this every day, but actually, based on data from the CDC, about 1 in 5 adults in Illinois, and it's pretty consistent across the country too, report having a disability. So in Illinois, out of 10 million adults, that's about 2 million people. And even if not all of those individuals, some of those people have mobility impairments that don't affect information accessibility. But if it's even half that, we're still talking a million people. And if you notice on the pie chart that I'm sharing here that shows the about 1 in 5 overall, the single largest slice of that pie is people with cognitive disabilities. We sometimes call that the hidden disability. There's almost certainly, maybe yourself, maybe people around you, even if you don't know it, there are people that you are certainly, working with or maybe even serving who have cognitive disabilities who may need some barriers removed. So that's what we're talking about, and making sure that we're including people with disabilities, maybe more people than you realize. The good news is that the hard part of the job, the part that allows us to show information in different colors with enhanced contrast, magnified to different levels, read out loud, shown in Braille, allows me to control it by using keyboard-only commands or by voice commands. That part of the job is done for us, and that's done by the tools that we generically call assistive technologies. And I want to give you just a little demonstration of assistive technologies. They range from simple little things all the way on up to expensive custom software like JAWS or Dragon, tools you might have heard of that can easily cost thousands of dollars or more. But again, not all assistive technology is expensive or complicated. What I would actually want to do, just a quick demonstration to kind of make it a little bit more real, is to show you assistive technologies that you probably have. So you may or may not realize it, but most of our computers, our mobile devices have assistive technologies built in. And um, what I'm going to demonstrate here, so I got to move some of the controls out the way there. Uh, for example, just the simple ability to be able to zoom in. So you probably, hopefully know that your web browser can zoom for you. And if I want to see the text just a little bit bigger, I can increase 25%, 50%, 75, all the way on up to 500%, magnifying the text, making it as much bigger as I need it to be in order to read it. Simple, easy tool, built right in. We all have it. And again, we don't have to create a website. In this case, I'm using my own website as an example. We don't have to create a website. We're going to have to make 10 different versions of a website in all different sizes and colors. I just want to make one website aware of these kinds of tools that will then adapt. And you may have noticed that not only did the text get bigger, but the page reflowed. It kind of adjusted in width. The word wrapping of the lines changed in order to keep it all within the width of the screen. So by being aware of that technology, I was able to design this site so that it would, very, very nicely cooperate when I turn on those tools. To take it a step further, let's imagine I have color blindness or a visual impairment that affects my perception of color, and maybe I need to change the colors on the screen. So again, using a built-in tool, this is Windows High Contrast, but Mac and even iOS and Android devices have the ability to do this too. I can just flip a switch, actually hit a keyboard command, and turn on high contrast. And if my website has been designed with the thought of accommodating this, it easily, quickly, immediately changes and adapts to the colors that I, as a user, have picked. In this case, it went from black text on a white background with dark blue links to white text on a black background with light blue, cyan links. And as a user, I could customize this however I wanted. I can set, whatever text color, whatever background color, whatever link color, etc. And it can meet my need. Again, and my job as a developer is not to make 10 different versions of different colors, but to be aware that a user might take advantage of this kind of tool and change the colors. And then I design my site so that it adapts. Another tool that's built in, this is the read aloud tool that's built into, in this case, Microsoft Edge. And it's kind of like a screen reader. Screen reader is typically used by somebody who's completely blind. You can operate it without seeing it at all. This read aloud tool is not a full-blown screen reader. It's actually designed more for people with cognitive disabilities who might benefit from hearing the information read aloud and seeing it highlighted. So I'm just going to go ahead and play the little demo.
Accessibility. The Illinois Information Technology Accessibility Act, ITA, requires Illinois agencies and universities to ensure that their websites, information systems, and information technologies are accessible to people with disabilities. While the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act already require the state to ensure its communications and services are accessible, the ITA establishes specific technical standards and encourages the state to address accessibility proactively.
And again, that's a tool built right into my browser. Um, a very, very powerful, very useful tool, and probably a tool that far more people than you realize are taking advantage of. Similar tools also available in Microsoft Word, Microsoft Outlook. And one of the things that I do, in addition to working with developers and vendors, is to help make sure that our own staff at the state who have needs like this are aware of these tools. And I actually have recently become aware that there's a lot more people taking advantage of this tool than you might realize. And again, I didn't have to build in or record the speech. I just designed the website so that it works with this tool, and we get the read aloud, the highlighting, the word highlighting, all automatically. Do another quick demo here. One more quick demo again of built-in assistive technology. This is what I've got a little quick recording of here is Windows voice access. You might have heard about an old school tool called Dragon Dictate back in the day. That was the first software that allowed me to control my computer by speech. Uh, that used to be, way back when that was $10,000 to buy something like that. Now it is available for free built into our operating system. So this is voice access built into Windows 11. Again, similar tools available in Mac OS and even on mobile devices. But this is just a quick demo of me controlling my computer, browsing a few web pages here simply by talking to it. Voice access wake up. Click guides. Page down. Page down. Page down. Click Windows speech recognition. Voice access sleep. And that tool can be used not only to, scroll the page and click on links, which I was showing it doing there, but on a forms page, we can actually fill out forms and actually use it to type. So I don't need to use the keyboard at all. So again, exciting that these tools are becoming so widespread that we don't even have to pay for them anymore. And important to know that they're out there. And again, the more easily available they are, the more people may be taking advantage of them, trying to use them on your website, your PDF, your app, maybe even far more than you realize. So if the assistive technologies are doing the heavy lifting, everything we just demonstrated, what do I need to do as a developer or a document author, content creator? What do I need to do to make sure that my information is going to be compatible with those tools? And one of the most important things to do, and really the place to start, is really with a mindset. Not even before we even learn a technique, we need to have a mindset. And the mindset comes into play when you think about the timeline of any project, whether it's a formal project lifecycle or if it's simply I'm making a document. I think of it, I design it in my head, I develop it or just type it out, I create it, and then I send it off, post it, whatever I do with it. Everything, whether it's formal or informal, has a life cycle. And one of the most important lessons we've learned over the years when it comes to accessibility is when we wait till the end, when we don't think about accessibility until I deploy it right before, or maybe even right after I send this thing out or post this thing. We are all in for a bunch of unhappiness. It's too late to make fixes, or if I do have to make fixes, that's going to delay my, getting my thing out. It could be expensive to go back and undo things and redo them the right way. And we've learned this lesson over and over and over and over again. And in every scenario, what we want to do is we want to shift left. And that is the idea of we need to shift accessibility from being an afterthought or something that I do after somebody complains or right before, my webmaster goes to post something. Shift it left, shift it earlier in the timeline so that I'm thinking about accessibility from the very beginning, from as early as possible. And what, in working with the state of Illinois, we've actually had a training program, a training, a real push to do training for state staff to teach them how to create accessible websites, accessible web apps, accessible documents. And we're learning more and more that it is it's really not that difficult, and it's much less difficult when you learn a little bit about accessibility in the beginning, and you do that, you implement that when you create your document, app, site, whatever. It's far easier to do that, even though it takes a little bit of investment to learn that up front. And what we're hearing from the folks that we've trained, again, we've recently just passed the 2,000 people train mark. What we're hearing over and over again is that, I thought it was scary. I thought it was going to be onerous. I thought it was going to really slow me down, but it's really not that bad. And that the types of things that you need to learn, while they might not be immediately obvious, you wouldn't think to do them, without some training or some effort to be aware, that once you've heard it once or seen the instructions written down, it's really not so bad. And that's what I want to offer up and offer up to you to take a quick look at tonight, but to feel free to go back to and review and take advantage of whenever you want. And it is our accessibility guides. And these are all posted at the Do It website. This is freely publicly available, hosted by the state of Illinois. It's at doit, D-O-I-T, .illinois.gov/accessibility. And it's the site I was using for the demos earlier. We've got information on the site here about the IITAA, that's the Illinois Information Technology Accessibility Act, the law that requires Illinois state agencies to be accessible, a recent Department of Justice rule that applied to all state and local governments. So it's a little more legal and technical stuff. But the guides that we have available here um, have been our effort. What we've done with the accessibility guides is we've listened to the feedback from the people that we've been training for many years, and a lot of them said, hey, the accessibility standards, what are these WCAG things, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines? I can't make heads or tails of what this is talking about. It's written for accessibility experts. And what we've done with our guides is, we've digested the World Wide Web Consortium's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 AA, the Section 508 requirements from the feds, and all the related documentation that comes from the vendors of the different, authoring tools. And we've tried to distill these down into the simplest, easiest, quickest tips and instructions on what to be aware of up front in order to make your site, page, app, document accessible. As you see here, we've got some information. Probably the most technical one is the web accessibility information. Take a look at that in just a sec. But we've also got Word, Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, PDF documents and PDF forms, some advanced PDF form tools like Designer, as well as Adobe InDesign, Captivate, which is used for learning, e-learning content, DocuSign, social media in general, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Blue Sky, you name it. Um, WebEx or other similar webinar platforms, images in general, videos in general, and color contrast. So the nature of these guides, let's go in. We'll take a quick look at a couple of these. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. Just want to kind of give you a sense of what's there. Look at probably the most complicated one first, and that's the one about web accessibility. And then we'll take a look at the much more easier one about Word accessibility. But when we're looking at these guides, again, we've distilled these down trying to make the confusing official WCAG guidelines much more palatable. So we've got a set of what we call the IITA techniques. These are basically coding techniques that are written in the language that web developers will understand, that basically lay out, rather than having to dig into the deep, difficult lengthy information about each success criteria in the WCAG guidelines. We've distilled it down to some as simple as it can be. So, for example, using a title element to provide a meaningful title for your page, your web page. And then we break it down in this what, why, and how format. What are we talking about? The title of the web page, what you see in the title bar at the top, and is specified using the title element in the head section. Why do we care about this? Well, because screen readers announce the title whenever they load a new page. It allows the users to confirm that they've reached the page they meant to go to. They didn't misclick a link or get hijacked or something. And maybe hopefully get a sense of what's on the page from a meaningful title. How do we do it? Well, we add a title element in the head section. We want to keep the name of the website at the beginning or the end and try to keep it concise, 60 characters or length. So distilled what is a lengthy, um, somewhat technical, right up down into what should be easy to digest. And again, I'm not going to go through much of what's here, but just to give you a sense, we get into how do we use headings, H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to identify the main, the headings for the whole page with an H1, H2s for sections, H3s for subsections, H4s for subsections, and so forth. Techniques to hide them if you need to. And again, without going into too much details, we have techniques for picking good colors, providing alternate text for images, when and how to do that, um, how to code tables so that a screen reader can not only read the text in a table, but also tell me what row and column each cell is. Um, Coding links so that they're understandable if I'm using a screen reader's links list feature and moving from link to link to link. Hopefully not running into a whole bunch of links that say click here, click here, click here, which I have no idea, but rather hearing meaningful links that tell me where I'm going. Adding labels to form fields, again, all distilled down to language that hopefully, if you've got a web development background, if you're a web developer, is going to be easy to understand and easy to digest. Okay. Similarly, I'll jump out of that and jump back to the guides, and let's take a look then at the Word accessibility. So if you're not a web developer, but all of us make Word documents, right? All of us, the same techniques apply if you're using email as well. So if we're using Microsoft Word or any Microsoft or similar product, the good news is that they've got accessibility support built in if you know where to look. So if I'm making a Word document or I'm preparing a PDF that's starting from a Word document, um, thinking about that shift left idea, the easiest way to make the document accessible, no matter what the end result's going to be, whether it's a Word, PDF, whatever, think about accessibility from the beginning. And then these tips, like adding a title by going into File Info Properties and typing in a title, using styles on the home ribbon to pick heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 for main heading, section heading, subsection heading. Using Word's list features as the way they were meant to be used, avoiding a few pitfalls, such as adding spaces between list items by using the enter key, using Shift Enter instead, using Word's sometimes hidden columns feature to make newspaper style columns rather than using tables or tabbing to make columns, adding alt text to pictures so that a screen reader knows what to say when it runs into a picture. Coding tables, a little bit more limited in Word, but there's actually a lot you can do to make tables accessible. And again, links, headers, footers, a few things to stay away from, and then information on how to use Word's built-in accessibility checker. So, accompanying this is an exercise. We actually use these exercises in our training classes, but it's all posted online. You're free to download the exercise documents and basically try to recreate an example accessible document by following the steps in that guide and see your end result. So this is a little preview here of the example document we use in the training and is available on those exercise pages. It's a little pretend newsletter for an office supply company. It's got a combination of some graphics, headings and sections, lists, nested lists, columns, a more complex graphic, a table. And in this example here, this is the end result. This is what you're going for. We've brought up words off the review ribbon, going to check accessibility. Again, features are built right in, and right next to it, there's read aloud, just like we saw earlier in Edge. But using check accessibility, the check accessibility option will bring up this accessibility assistant, telling us right now it looks good. That's what we're going for. But when I make mistakes, it'll tell me, hey, you picked color contrast. That's, the color's not contrasty enough. Your blue is too light. You need to darken it up a little bit. Or I forgot to put an alt text on an image tell a screen reader what it should say. I didn't code the tables right, and a few other document structure related things it can find. I also taking advantage here of the navigation pane, also shown on the check accessibility um, submenu here. The navigation pane shows me on the left the headings in the document. And I kind of touched on headings a little bit. In the headings in this document, we see obscured just a little bit here. There's the word newsletter, big and bold, and then slightly smaller, but still big and bold. Locations above the list of locations, featured products above the list of the products, and then sales update above the graph. Those are the headings. Visually, you see those big and bold. You can skim them. You can focus in on the one that you care about and ignore the rest. And by coding these correctly, could I mark those up by setting it to, whatever point bold font? Absolutely. Would a screen reader then know it's a heading? Not at all. So by using styles, which is off the home ribbon, and indicating these as a heading one, heading two, they then are marked as headings in a way that a screen reader, of someone who's blind and can't see the formatting, can also hear. They can actually use a special tool built into their screen reader to bring up just a list of the headings, similar to what I see over here on the left-hand side built into Word. I can skim through those, here locations, featured products, sales update, focus in on the one that I want to, and jump right to it. So again, just giving you a little taste here. These are features that are built right in. The guides go through in a quick and easy format how to take advantage of these. And when we do that up front, we've done it in the Word document. Even if I save it as PDF, and this is the same document now, saved to PDF, open in Adobe Acrobat, and just to show that we got the job done, I'm running Adobe Acrobat's built-in accessibility checker and passing with flying colors. So we did all the work in Word, followed the guide, and I bring it over here to Acrobat, and the checker is showing me job done. So again, the idea of shifting left. You might notice over here on the right, Acrobat actually does have the ability to do some what we call remediation or fixing. If I come in here and I've got a document that's all bad. Now here's the same document done without accessibility in mind and a whole bunch of errors showing up on the left. Image only has failed, tagged PDF has failed, titles failed, a whole bunch of fails here. Looks just the same. There's the accessible, there's the inaccessible, looks just the same. But by following those techniques in Word, we've come and created a fully accessible document. And there are some options here in Acrobat that say, give me some tools, auto tagging, reading order, where I can actually go and try to fix things here in the PDF. But again, shift left. The the more we can do our work earlier in the process, even if it means backing up. So in this case, backing up from the PDF to the Word document, the better off we are in the long run. So I want to save some time here for questions. I just want to hope that I know that was kind of quick overview there. Really just wanted to kind of encourage you to know there's some resources out there freely available, no strings attached, I promise. Paid for by the taxpayers of the state of Illinois, so thank you. Available to you and anyone you're working with. And again, remembering that idea that the earlier we think about accessibility, a little bit of learning up front pays off dividends in the long run. The other key thing I want to leave you with is that accessibility is a journey. It's not a finish line that we get to and then we're done. It's a way, it's changing the way we do things. And on any journey, the most important step is the next step. So don't get overwhelmed. Don't think I've got, 1,000 documents I got to deal with. Um, Start one foot after the other, and we'll all be making, doing our part to make a more inclusive digital world. So with that, I'll stop, and we got good time for questions left. I do want to leave you with the information if you need it. Again, I'm with the Do It Office of Information Accessibility. That's the Department of Innovation Technology with the state of Illinois. If you need to email, feel free to. It's doit.accessibility@illinois.gov. And then all the resources I was showing off there, freely available at doit.illinois.gov/accessibility. So I will stop sharing and please feel free to throw any questions. I guess, how do we want to handle questions? In chat, unmute? What's the easiest way to do questions for everyone?
Well, hey, first of all, I'd like to thank our speaker, Mike, for this awesome presentation. And if that's okay, I'm Kyle. I'd like to guide us through that. I'd like to look through the audience questions
Perfect.
and facilitate the next part of the Q&A, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
And we have some so cue to the audience. Keep throwing your questions in the chat. There's some good questions already, and I'll just start off with the first one that I can see. Um, what are some differences between ITAA and the new DOJ or ADA requirements?
The good question. The easy answer to that is none. So the IITA, I'll clarify that. Practically none. Um, Literally, the IITA is a state law, and the state law requires the state to comply with WCAG 2.1 AA. That's the International Accessibility Standard for all IT that the state of Illinois uses. So that's public facing websites, apps, et cetera. It's also internal facing intranets, internal apps, and so forth. The DOJ rule was specifically about Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is about services provided by state and local governments. So I guess one difference there is that the DOJ rule applies to local governments as well as the state. IATA applies to state only. DOJ also applies to state. The DOJ rule applies to public facing stuff. So in that sense, the IATA is broader in that sense. But for most practical purposes, they both require compliance with the same underlying set of standards, WCAG 2.1 AA. So other than the minor differences in who does it apply to, the requirements are identical.
Well, thank you for clarifying about that point. Another question from the audience is about a question from someone who works in education and has heard about a lot of universities planning on taking on data offline because it's difficult for them to meet accessibility regulations. And there seems to be a deadline involved that perhaps was this past April. And this audience member is asking for clarification about whether this deadline is really going to happen, really going to have a kind of an impact that causes universities to take data offline. Any knowledge about
Right.
that? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the deadline in question is the deadline that was under the Department of Justice rule. And really what the Department of Justice rule, again, it required the same technical thing that the IITA did for the state, that the Americans with Disabilities Act did nationally. But the difference was that the DOJ said they were going to add some teeth to it. They were going to start enforcing it by the deadline. And the enforcement, they didn't literally spell it out in that rule, but similar practices under different titles of the ADA suggested that it might be 100, $200,000 fines, which obviously are significant. So, but that rule, the rule and the deadline at which the DOJ might start enforcing it depended on the size of the entity. For larger entities, it was going to be April of 2026. For smaller ones, it was going to be April of 2027. However, about a month ago, right before the deadline hit, the current DOJ extended it all by a year. So the deadlines now for large governments is April of 2027, and then for smaller ones, April of 2028. However, the way that that rule was extended was is being questioned legally. And so the National Federation of the Blind, a national group that advocates for people who are blind, is actually challenging that extension in court right now. And it's possible, no one knows, but it's possible if the court sides with the NFB, the rule will snap back to the April and 2026, 27. So that said, I would recommend, and this is not legal advice, and I'm not speaking for the DOJ in any means, but focus on it's a journey. Prior to the DOJ rule, I've worked with lots of advocacy groups for people with disabilities, and in every instance, in my experience, now this doesn't guarantee for the future, but in my past experience, every time we worked on a complaint and we were able to show good faith effort to make progress. That that worked. Okay. Not, and I can't speak for the DOJ, um, but rather than being paralyzed in fear and not doing anything, I think we can safely say it's better to do something. So think of it as a journey, get a plan in place, get progress, making progress, whatever you can do to show a good faith effort. And then to the issue of universities or organizations taking content offline, it's certainly happening. Um, And in some cases, probably most cases, it's maybe a bad thing. In some cases, a good thing. It is absolutely true. And part of the reason the deadline was extended was because, more so even than universities, school districts, you can imagine how stretched school districts are financially and technically. They reached out as well did a consortium of county governments, again, smaller without the resources that like the state has. Um, Reached out and said, we can't do this and not in time. And that was kind of the reason for the extension. And it's a valid reason. There's no doubt it was going to be a financial and a technical stretch for small organizations. Um, some of them did take the approach, the step then, well, I'm going to take it down so I'm not at risk. And that was something every organization had to gauge for themselves. I will say one positive aspect of that, and what we are encouraging the state agencies to do is take advantage of this as an opportunity to clean house. It's like, you got company coming, you're going to scramble and clean the house. We are finding at the state, we have so much digital junk out there that we are well overdue to clean house. And the reality is, yeah, we've got hundreds of thousands of old PDF documents. We can get rid of a big chunk of those. Not because we're taking them down, just because they're not accessible, because we don't need them anymore. They're out of date, they're useless, they don't need to be there. I talked with, I think it was my counterpart in Rhode Island who did the same exercise. And I think, if I'm remembering right, I think they said they actually identified 90% of their stuff as not worth keeping up. They weren't taking it down, because I can't meet the rule. It was they took a lot, and they did this early on. They were more proactive than we were. Um, and they realized we have so much junk out there. So take advantage of the opportunity to clean house. Each organization has to weigh for itself the risk, the potential legal risk of, do I need to take it down in order to not get a fine? For right now, we all do have a little bit of a breather. We have an extension until at least April of 2027, but asterisk, if the NFB lawsuit stands, that deadline may snap back. So there may be a little bit longer answer, but hopefully answer the question.
Well, thank you, and I'll stay tuned for follow-up questions to that. But thanks for that very thoughtful first crack at the answer. Another audience question about some marketing materials that are out there that are promising accessibility accessibility improvements via AI. Do you have some thoughts on AI and accessibility?
Yes, absolutely. And we are watching very, very closely because two important takeaways. Number one, the good news, I absolutely believe AI is going to revolutionize accessibility in the next 2 to 5 years. However, today, and I've looked at every product I can get my hands on that claims to fix it with I have not seen one yet that meets the level that I think is the minimum level to make it make sense. We're not quite there yet. It's absolutely coming. And then every time I think, oh yeah, we got to be there, I'll go AI something and get some crazy hallucination that makes no sense. But so as with a lot of things AI, the potential is certainly on its way, but be wary of, there are, unfortunately, there's a lot of good vendors and developers out there who are scrambling in good faith to make the AI tools I have no doubt we will be using a couple years from now. There are unfortunately others out there who are just trying to make a buck. So be very wary of any claims. The easier they make it sound, the less likely it is to be true. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Well, thank you. Another question about the accessibility team at DOIT, and are there other things besides training that the accessibility team has taken on or focused on?
Yeah, some of it's kind of internal state stuff. I'm not sure how interesting it'd be if you do work with a bigger organization, whether it's government or private sector. The first thing we actually tackled was governance, which is our process of reviewing and approving significant IT projects. And when I started in this role, I've been working in IT accessibility for decades, but I started officially as Chief Information Accessibility Officer about 4 years ago. We moved this into a central enterprise level thing, and my first goal was to what I called operationalize accessibility, kind of that shift left idea. Rather than always scrambling at the end of a project, is it accessible? Can it go? What do we need to fix before it can go? I found in our organization where do most of the, where are the projects touched, and governance is what we call that process, and how can I plug in early on to just start spreading the word? Hey, accessibility is a thing. We need to do it. The earlier we hit it, the easier it's going to be, and here are the resources to help get it done. And to be honest, that has been a major improvement within the state. We really, we got a long way to go still, but we have seen I'm not arguing, I'm not telling people about accessibility for the first time anymore. People have heard about it, they know they're going to get asked. We still have a lot of work to do to get it done, but to not have to be fighting the fight of introducing it for the first time has been big. So the idea of governance, that idea of shifting left, whatever process you can find, however big your organization is, to start thinking about accessibility early.
So as it happens, I see a kind of a related or similar question about the idea of shifting left and how to sell this idea, given tight timelines that often are at play, given
Right.
other constraints. I'm not sure.
Right.
I think you started giving an answer about that, and I wonder if you have anything to add on about
Yeah,
selling
it
this.
it we there's definitely, it's kind of like the steps of grieving. When we bring up this news to people, we see that first it's shock, and then panic, and then paralyzation, and then kind of come around to it. So to get through those stages, I think first of all, just remembering we got to start somewhere. Doing something is better than nothing. And when it comes to the idea of shifting left, the sells a little bit harder, but it really has been proven out, and that is in the long run it is going to save you money. Now that does, and time and effort. That doesn't mean, maybe I've got a critical form that's up on my site and it's used to apply for services from my organization. Okay, maybe I gotta, put all hands on deck to deal with this thing. It's so important. But for most things, we are telling folks, don't panic, look at the process, think about how we can start from the beginning. Because, and here's the justifications. Um, Thinking about a document. So imagine I create that newsletter that I was showing as an example in Word, and I don't pay any attention to accessibility, and I make it's all inaccessible. I save it as PDF. I send it to my webmaster, and they say it's not accessible, and they hand it off to a third party to remediate, either somebody you contract with or somebody who's taken on that job for your organization, and they fix what you did in Acrobat, and then they post it. And then you realize, oh, I got the date wrong, or I misspelled the director's name. I need to make an edit. When I have to make that edit has to be made in the original Word document, resaved as PDF. All the accessibility work has to be done over again. And that's one of the biggest sellers, especially when it comes to documents, is when you approach accessibility at the end for documents in particular, have somebody remediate the document at the end, you are locked in. Any change means you've got to do that remediation in a lot of cases all over again. We actually had a discussion with a big constitutional office this afternoon about that exact thing, because they were looking at hiring people to do remediation. I say, do it where you need to. It's a last resort. It's an emergency kind of thing. Know who resources are who can remediate something when you need to. But if you plan for that in the long run, you will be on the hook to some vendor forever, because you will be making inaccessible documents. Unless you're going to stop making stuff, you're going to then have to have it remediated, and you are going to be paying that cost over and over and over and over again. And not only is it a cost in money, but it's that cost and frustration of time. I've got this important report that needs to go out. I can't make a quick change to it, because if I make a change, that remediation step has to happen all over again. So that's the gist of the arguments that we've been laying out, and actually we've seen playing out in reality. Again, it's not an all or nothing thing. Sometimes you just have to do remediation, uh, not shift left. But the arguments and the proof that it saves you money and time in the long run have been proven a million times.
Well, thank you. I see another question about whether Shy Hacknight as an organization can do things to help with accessibility for smaller organizations. And I uh, don't know if it's fair to ask you to provide the answer about this, but if you have a perspective, I really welcome
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
just helping share the word. I think what we've done tonight is great. Get the word out. That's the place we have to start. Hopefully, accessibility is not new to too many people anymore, but I'm sure there are some folks out there who haven't heard it. I think getting that message out that, it doesn't need to be scary. We're going to start somewhere. Feel free to share the resources and maybe try them yourself. That would, kind of lead by example. Um, if you want to take a look either at those IATA techniques for web stuff, that's a little more involved, or any of those document ones, can you get through that guide? Does it make sense? I think hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised and just share that with people. Hey, here's a resource. I tried it once and it wasn't too bad. Or if you get good at it, maybe we could even have some volunteers to help do it. I'm much more a believer in the, teach people to fish rather than give them a fish. Sometimes if I ever give them, if I ever remediate something for somebody, I say we're going to use this as a learning opportunity. I'll do it for you, but then we're going to go over it. You're going to learn how to do it, and you're going to do it next time. So that's absolutely something we could do as a volunteer group as well.
Awesome. And I would also like to add on that this question might be a good one to revisit when we get around later in the evening to breakout group sessions. But whomever posed this question can also is very welcome and encouraged to speak up when we all get into our breakout groups and start working on particular issues that are of interest to us. So another question as we're getting closer to 8 o'clock, is what are some of the most challenging things that you've tackled thus far?
Sure, sure. There are some things that are technically, to be honest, the most challenging is the people, the change. Change is hard for people. And that's been the most challenging. But technically, the most challenging, and some that we actually are going to be working with some of the folks on the call here with, is stuff that is inherently visual. So, like massive data visualizations and GIS, geographical information systems. Those are some of the technically hardest problems to solve just because we don't have good answers for them yet. But we actually, I think a couple of folks on the call here, we are going to be working with some a GIS group and talking about kind of what's the leading thought on how to make very inherently visual things effectively accessible to people who can't see. And technically that's a challenge.
Cool. Thank you. Well, just keeping an eye on the time, I'll squeeze in a last question here about whether there are any paid courses or trainings that, in your view, might be worth taking
Um,
on versus free resources.
Yeah, I would look at I promote our guides just because I try, I know that they're good. I know that they're easy. They're not a course per se, but you can probably, they are the outline of a course. I don't know off the top of my head. We've looked at a handful of different ones. Um, and we actually do record the courses that we teach internally. They're live online courses, and have been playing with the idea we should make a clean recording of one that we can post publicly. So I don't know off the top of my head, but actually, if you watch the site, I have written on the to-do section of my whiteboard with a big red box around it, make some videos. So hopefully we'll be getting those out there. Yeah, there certainly are reputable courses out there. I just don't know them off the top of my head to recommend.
Cool, fair enough. Well, thanks to the audience for all these great questions. I apologize if I missed one. I apologize if we didn't have time for it, but I'm quite happy that we have more than enough good questions for today. So the speaker was really engaging today. And thanks very much to our speaker. Great job, great presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the invite and thanks for everybody who's listening. Help spread the word.